A reasonable question is, why do we care about rare diseases, right? They're rare. But it turns out a lot of people have rare diseases. There's about 7,000 different diseases, and if you put them all together, that gets you to about 10% of the population. So about 30 million people just in the US. At the high end, you've got diseases that could impact about 200,000 people in the US, but it goes down to things that are pretty ultra rare. So they could just affect a few dozen people that are known to all of history throughout the world. There's some diseases that have just one patient that's ever been known. For a lot of rare diseases, there's just not that much known. The research into their basic biology is really in its infancy compared to where we are with a lot of common diseases. And for that reason, if you're a drug developer, there's a lot of unknowns that you're facing. So it's hard to find patients in the first place. If you do, they're going to be pretty spread out all across the world. And so just getting together enough patients to do a study for drug development is going to be more time-consuming and expensive. But compounding that, rare diseases can often be really hard to diagnose. For some of these diseases, you may see them once in your career. And so it's just really hard for clinicians to have the experience necessary to diagnose these diseases quickly. The economics of drug development for rare diseases can be quite daunting. It's simple math that the cost of doing all that research to be able to bring a drug to market may not be that different. But then once the drug's approved, you're going to need to spread that cost over a much smaller population of patients who are receiving treatment. So if you look at some of the medications out there that have high price tags or end up in the news, they tend to be rare disease drugs. So some of these drugs might have costs in the hundreds of thousands of dollars per patient per year. And now the insurers are asking, well, how much value is that going to bring over a whole lifetime? So in that situation, economic modeling is really important to make the best use of all the information that's available and come up with a projection of the value of that drug that decision makers like payers and others can use to decide on reimbursement. That's really where analysis groups' work comes in. So we help drug developers use the best evidence possible to inform their decisions throughout the drug development process, both in designing and executing the research that can help them measure the drug's efficacy and safety, and also measuring its economic value so they can communicate that to payers and other decision makers. Our integrated approach to healthcare consulting is very valuable here. For example, combining our experience in clinical research, health economics, and product strategy, that can help us design a single piece of research that's going to be valuable not only for clinical decision makers like the FDA, but also for economic decision makers like healthcare payers. One of the most rewarding things about working in the rare disease space is just the intense involvement from patients and their families. I remember my introduction to this was at my first rare disease scientific conference many years ago. And if you go to scientific conferences, usually there's academics and researchers, but at a lot of rare disease conferences, there is a very pronounced attendance from patients and families. And so, you'll be up there presenting your research and you'll get very direct questions from a patient about what does this mean and how is it going to affect me? And I really like getting those questions, right? They're things that need to be asked. I've really valued being in those situations and having the opportunity to talk about research with the people who it's intended to help.